The morning sunlight leaked through the floor-to-ceiling windows of King Lab's tower in Manhattan, slicing across polished chrome glass walls and the tense faces of executives gathered for a high-stakes quarterly board meeting. It was the kind of room where people spoke in numbers instead of sentiments, where ambition hummed under the fluorescent lights, and where every misplaced breath could cost millions. Emma Rowe never belonged here. Yet, somehow, she stepped into this world without meaning to. She was only trying to deliver a tray of carefully balanced cappuccinos to the outer office, the same task she performed every weekday morning, before rushing to her second job. Today, though, the usual assistant who intercepted her was nowhere to be found, and the door to the boardroom stood slightly ajar, as if inviting her into the lion's den. Emma pushed it open half an inch and called out softly, hoping to hand off the drinks quickly before heading back to the cafe downstairs. But her voice met silence. She inched inside. Then suddenly, 30 pairs of eyes turned toward her, freezing her mid-step. At the head of the table sat Alexander King, 34 years old, razor-sharp in a charcoal suit, the kind of billionaire CEO who commanded rooms with a single glance. He was in the middle of presenting a multi-million-dollar projection when her accidental entrance cut through his momentum. Alex blinked once as if processing the intrusion, then tilted his head with a slow, amused exhale that spread across the room like a cold draft. Even the coffee girl wants to get promoted these days. His tone was polished, almost friendly, yet the ridicule lodged itself beneath Emma's ribs before she could shield herself. Laughter flooded the room in small, controlled waves. Someone murmured that she should take the drinks to the actual service area. Someone else said she must be new. Emma felt the burn rush up her neck, but she kept her back straight the way her mother always taught her when facing condescension. With trembling fingers, she set the tray on the nearby counter, nodded quickly without trusting her voice, and slipped out of the room, closed the door, and leaned against the wall to breathe again. In that moment, humiliation became a weight she had carried too many times, and today it felt heavier than usual. Before her mind could fully process what happened, she was already downstairs in the service hallway of the building, trying to shake off the sting. She pushed herself through her remaining tasks for the morning, delivering drinks, wiping counters, stocking supplies, reminding herself that these people did not know her and did not define her. But humiliation has a way of echoing long after the moment ends. Later, during her lunch break, Emma stopped by the community center thrift corner, where she often picked up low-cost clothes to alter and resell for extra income. She dug through the donation bin, sorting random items when her hand brushed something smooth, cool, luxurious. She pulled out a garment bag, unzipped it, and gasped softly. Inside lay a silver evening gown, unlike anything she had ever touched. The fabric shimmered under the dim center lights like moonlit water. It was not overly revealing, nor extravagant in a flashy way, but elegant, refined, almost regal. It felt as if the dress held a story. As she ran her fingers across the neckline, a strange warmth filled her chest. For a moment, she imagined herself wearing it not to impress, but to become someone unafraid to be seen. Silver dress equals identity. The phrase came to her unbidden, as if whispered from somewhere deeper than memory. She looked around, wondering who would donate something so valuable. The volunteer sorting books shrugged and said that wealthy donors sometimes dropped off items anonymously. Maybe it was an accident, maybe a deliberate gift. Regardless, Emma knew she could never afford anything like it, nor even imagine a night where she might need such a gown. Still, she carefully folded it back into the bag and held it to her chest longer than she meant to before placing it aside. She tried to return to the rest of her day, but the dress stayed in her mind like a second heartbeat. Evening fell, and she walked home from the subway carrying discount groceries, thinking about her mother's medical bills, about overdue rent, and about the boardroom moment replaying on loop. She told herself she was fine, but some silent part of her longed to step into a life that did not shrink her. When she reached her apartment door, she noticed an envelope taped neatly to it with her name handwritten in dark ink. Emma frowned, glancing down the hallway, but no one was around. She opened the envelope expecting a notice from the landlord, but instead she found thick ivory cardstock embossed with the King Labs logo. Her breath caught. It was an invitation to the upcoming King Labs annual Innovation Gala held at the Met. She read the words twice 3 times before she accepted they were real. At the bottom, someone had written a single sentence in graceful script. For the girl who deserves to be seen. Emma stared at the message as the noise of the city dimmed around her. Someone wanted her at that gala. Someone believed she deserved to be seen in a world far brighter than any she had ever known. She did not know who sent the invitation or why, but the humiliation from earlier, the silver dress from the donation bin, and now this mysterious invitation tangled into one undeniable truth. Her life was being pulled toward something bigger, brighter, more dangerous than she imagined. And Emma Rowe standing in a worn apartment hallway with grocery bags at her feet, felt the quiet beginning of a story she never asked for yet somehow desperately needed. Alexander King had been called many things by the business magazines that worshipped or feared him genius visionary tyrant heir to the future, but none of those titles ever mentioned the parts of him he could not outrun. Standing at the top floor of King Labs with the New York skyline stretching beyond the glass, he looked every inch the flawless billionaire CEO people imagined. Yet, beneath the immaculate suits and strategic brilliance lay a heart cracked in ways no press article ever captured. 3 years earlier, the world believed he had simply ended an engagement to a prominent tech philanthropist, but only a handful of people knew the truth. The betrayal still pulsed like an old bruise, a reminder that love, even the kind built on years of companionship, could turn into a weapon. Since then, Alex had moved through life with a single rule: never give anyone the chance to hurt him again. That rule shaped the man he became ice cold. Fast-thinking and emotionally unreachable. If someone wronged him, he removed them. If someone was weaker, he ignored them. If someone wanted closeness, he offered distance. It was a simple system, and it worked until a coffee girl walked into his boardroom and looked at him as if she had no idea who he thought he was. That should have been the end of it, but something about her quietly shaken dignity stuck with him long after the meeting ended. He hated that. The next morning, he stood in the lobby of King Labs waiting for his car when he spotted Emma Rowe carrying a tray of bottled water across the marble floor for the security team. She kept her eyes low, careful, focused. He did not realize she was the same girl from the boardroom until she moved closer, turning into the light. Her expression was calm, but he thought he saw a flicker of something stubborn beneath it. He stepped toward the elevator, and so did she, ending up side by side near the turnstiles. He did not look at her, and she did not look at him. But his assistant Lucas whispered something under his breath that made Alex give a small, humorless exhale. Some people stay small. It is their destiny. Emma heard it. The tiniest shift in her breathing told him she did. She did not flinch, but the way her jaw tightened carried a strength he did not expect. Alex turned away, deciding he had spoken nothing wrong, yet somehow feeling as if he had miscalculated something invisible. He shook it off. Alex had no room in his mind for strangers or emotions, especially now when King Labs was in the middle of launching its most ambitious project, a next-generation neural interface expected to redefine global communication. Investors watched every move he made. Rivals waited for him to slip. The last thing he needed was a distraction. Meanwhile, on the opposite end of the city, Emma hurried to her second shift at a grocery store in Brooklyn, stocking shelves before working the late register. She had learned to survive by stacking paychecks from 3 jobs, juggling bills, and squeezing her dreams beneath day-to-day necessity. Her mother's health was worsening, leaving medical payments piling higher every month. Emma felt the weight, but she carried it without complaint. She had no time for resentment. No time for men like Alexander King who dismissed people with a sentence. Yet his words replayed in her mind that night not because she believed them, but because she refused to let them define her. At midnight, she stood outside her apartment building, catching her breath before climbing the narrow stairs. The invitation card from King Labs was still tucked in her bag, its presence strange and electrifying. She told herself she would ignore it, but some part of her kept reaching for it, tracing the embossed logo over and over. Why her who sent it? And what did they see in her that she could not see herself? The following afternoon, fate or coincidence cut her path with Alex once more. She was delivering bottled water to the valet station when Alex stepped out of a black sedan. He reached for a cup of coffee handed to him by his driver and nearly collided with Emma as she passed. For a split second, they locked eyes. He looked at her as if searching for recognition, but she did not give him any. She simply moved aside with quiet dignity. It unsettled him more than it should have. Alex entered the building carrying a weight he could not name. Something about her refusal to shrink disturbed the calculus of how he expected people to behave around him. Lucas noticed. "You seem distracted, sir," he said lightly. Alex did not answer. But later in his office overlooking the relentless movement of Manhattan, he found himself thinking about Emma Rowe, the girl he had laughed at without knowing her name, the girl who carried herself with humility, yet a spark of something he could not place. He reminded himself she was irrelevant, yet the thought followed him like a shadow. Emma, meanwhile, stocked the fridges in the grocery store, forcing herself to focus. She replayed the moment Alex looked at her not with disdain this time, but confusion, almost awareness. It unsettled her, too. She did not want to think about him, but the invitation in her bag whispered that perhaps the universe had a plan she could not yet understand. She pulled it out, reading the handwritten line again, "For the girl who deserves to be seen." She closed her eyes, breathed deeply, and whispered to herself, "I will go, not for him, for me." And, with that decision, her quiet world began to shift inch by inch toward the night that would change everything. Morning came with the warm hum of chatter inside the small cafe on the corner of Lexington and 43rd, a place where New Yorkers lined up for espresso before disappearing into their hurried lives. Emma Rowe wiped down the counter with practiced motion, setting out pastries while reminding herself to breathe through the exhaustion of balancing 3 jobs. The mysterious Gala invitation weighed in her bag like a promise she was afraid to believe in. The bell above the cafe door chimed softly. A man walked in, and for a moment the room seemed to greet him without him saying a word. He had that presence, the kind that made people lift their heads instinctively. Tall, clean-cut, dressed in a navy suit that fit him too well to be off the rack. His hair was slightly tousled in the effortless way that said he could charm a boardroom without trying. His eyes were warm, steady, observant. He greeted the barista by name, greeting half the customers as if he frequented this place often. His smile was the kind that softened the edges of a hard day. Emma did not know him yet, but New York's business world certainly did. Mason Cross, the 35-year-old CEO of Crosstech King Lab's closest competitor, a man praised for his innovation and admired for his charisma. If Alexander King was ice, Mason was sunlight. But Emma saw none of that reputation. All she saw was a polite customer walking up to the counter with a gentle nod. "Morning," he said with a calm voice. His gaze flicked to her name tag, Emma. She managed a small smile. "What can I get for you?" Mason glanced at the pastries, then shook his head slightly. "Just the usual, please." She blinked, unsure. "I am sorry. What is your usual?" He laughed under his breath, not mocking but surprised in a pleasant way. "First time I have seen someone new here in months. A double latte, no foam." "Right." Emma nodded quickly, moving to the machine. She felt him watching her not in a predatory or judgmental way, but as if he was trying to understand her. The kind of attention that made her feel seen rather than inspected. When she handed him the cup, he noticed the faint red mark on her wrist from carrying heavy crates the night before. "Long shift?" he asked. She shrugged softly. "Something like that." A customer at a nearby table started complaining loudly about a missing muffin, demanding attention and getting irritated at every small delay. The barista beside Emma tensed, overwhelmed. Before Emma could think, she stepped forward, handling the situation with calm, practiced grace. She apologized, genuinely offered a replacement, and diffused the tension with a touch of humor that melted the man's anger almost instantly. The customer sat back down, grumbling but no longer shouting. The room relaxed. Mason watched with clear admiration forming in his eyes. "You are good at this," he said when she returned to the counter. "Really good." Emma felt her cheeks warm. "Just part of the job." He tilted his head. "No, that was someone who knows how to treat people with dignity." Those words landed differently, not like Alex's careless remarks. Mason's voice had sincerity woven into it. Emma looked down at the counter, pretending to wipe an imaginary spill. While she tried not to stare, Mason studied the quiet determination in her eyes, the resilience beneath her exhaustion, and something like recognition flickered inside him as if he had once been where she was. He opened his wallet to pay, but paused when the Gala invitation slipped out of her bag as she turned. It hit the floor with a soft note. Mason bent to pick it up before she could. His brow lifted in surprise. The King Lab's annual Innovation Gala. His tone carried intrigue. "You are going to this?" Emma hesitated, unsure if she should lie or admit the truth. "I was invited," she said finally. He looked genuinely impressed. "Not many receive this, even fewer who deserve it." She frowned, confused by his tone. "Do you know who sent it?" He shook his head, lips curving slowly. But whoever it was, they clearly see something valuable. Before she could respond, he gently slid the invitation back toward her. "You should go. A girl like you deserves to be in every room she wants to be in." The wording struck something deep. A girl like you. Not an insult, but a recognition. Warmth haloed his expression, and for a heartbeat she felt safe in a way she did not expect with a stranger. The cafe door opened again, and this time Alexander King walked in with Lucas. Alex did not notice Mason at first, but his gaze locked on Emma as if the memory of the boardroom moment crashed into him. Then he noticed Mason standing close to her. A flicker of irritation crossed his eyes so quickly it might have been missed by anyone who did not know how to read the smallest fractures in powerful men. Mason turned at the shift in air. "Well, the King of King Labs." Alex's jaw tightened. "Cross." They exchanged curt nods that could slice through steel. No warmth, no courtesy. Only rivalry sharpened by years of silent competition. Then Mason glanced at Emma and said lightly, yet intentionally loud enough to be heard, "You have good people here. You should try noticing them." Alex's eyes snapped toward her, and for once he had no practiced response. Jealousy, thin and quiet, curled under his ribs without permission. Emma felt tension weave between the two CEOs like a taut wire. She stepped back instinctively, unsure how to navigate their strange, silent battle. Mason gave her a small, reassuring smile. "See you around," he said before leaving the cafe. Alex watched him go with a look that revealed more than he wanted. Then he glanced at Emma. She kept her face unreadable. She did not owe him comfort. She did not owe him anything. But when he left, something in the air remained charged, tangled, unfinished. Emma exhaled slowly. For the first time, she glimpsed what it meant to be at the center of two powerful gazes. And, without realizing it, she had just become the spark in a rivalry that would change everything for all three of them. The community library in Brooklyn had always been Emma's quiet refuge. A place where old carpet softened footsteps and sunlit dust floated lazily in the air like forgotten dreams. On her rare afternoons off, she visited not for books, but for peace, for the sense that life could pause for just a moment. Today, she arrived with one purpose, the silver dress. She carried it carefully in her backpack, wrapped in tissue as though it were fragile glass. The librarian, Mrs. Callahan, a gentlewoman with gray curls and kind eyes, saw Emma enter and smiled. "You look like someone carrying a secret," she said warmly. Emma hesitated, then whispered, "I think I am." She slipped into the small dressing alcove behind the stacks, the place where local theater groups sometimes kept costumes. Her hands trembled a little as she unwrapped the dress. It shimmered under the soft yellow light, not flashy but elegant like moonlight woven into fabric. The material felt smooth and impossibly light. She held her breath as she lifted it over her head. When she finally stepped in front of the tall library mirror, she froze. The dress fit as though it had been waiting for her. The neckline framed her collarbones gently, the fabric hugged her waist without revealing more than it should, and the soft silver glow reflected against her skin, making her look almost unreal. She stared at her reflection, hardly recognizing the woman she saw. This was not the tired grocery clerk, or the overworked barista, or the girl humiliated in a boardroom. This was someone different, someone she had never allowed herself to imagine. Mrs. Callahan approached slowly, covering her mouth in awe. "My goodness, child, that dress was made for you." Emma swallowed. "It is not mine. I found it in the donation bin." The older woman shook her head softly. "That dress has a story, Emma. A very long story." She motioned for Emma to sit at the small wooden table near the window, then carefully spread a file of old community newsletters and donation records. "The dress was donated anonymously years ago," she explained, "but some of us know who it belonged to." Emma leaned closer, feeling her heartbeat quicken. A wealthy woman, someone beloved in this neighborhood. She funded school programs, paid medical bills, quietly brought books for the children every week, never made it about herself. "A philanthropist?" Emma asked. "More like a guardian angel." Mrs. Callahan smiled bittersweet. She passed away unexpectedly, but she left instructions for many of her belongings. And that dress, specifically, she said must be given one day to a girl who needed to be seen. Emma froze. The echo of the handwritten line from the Gala invitation vibrated in her mind. "For the girl who deserves to be seen." Emma touched the dress gently. "Are you saying she chose me?" Mrs. Callahan shook her head. "I did not choose. The dress did." She said it simply as though stating a fact of nature. Emma looked back at her reflection, her throat tightening. She felt both overwhelmed and strangely comforted, as if the universe had nudged something quietly into place. Mrs. Callahan's voice softened as she continued. "There is something else. A secret." She reached into a drawer and pulled out an old photograph. Emma leaned in. The woman in the picture wore the same silver dress, her eyes bright, her smile graceful. But standing beside her, arm wrapped around her shoulders, was someone Emma recognized instantly, even though she had only seen photos online. Alexander King. Younger, softer eyes unguarded. Emma's stomach tightened. "That is his sister," Mrs. Callahan whispered. "Eva King. She donated to our community for years but kept her name hidden so the help would be about the people, not her." Emma blinked, absorbing each word. Eva. Not Alex, not King Labs. Eva King. The woman whose legacy had quietly brushed against Emma's life. The librarian sighed. She used to say that every girl deserves one moment where the world finally sees her. Emma inhaled slowly. The dress, which had felt magical, now felt heavy with meaning. It was not simply beautiful. It was a memory, a promise, a thread connecting her to a life she never knew existed. And perhaps it was no coincidence that she found it. She stood again, facing the mirror this time, not with disbelief, but with a trembling understanding. The girl in the reflection was not pretending. She was revealing. Stepping out of the changing alcove, she folded the dress gently, but Mrs. Callahan placed a hand over hers. "Keep it," she said quietly. "It is yours now." Something in Emma's chest cracked open. Gratitude, fear, hope. All tangled. She clutched the dress to her heart, whispering, "Thank you not just to the librarian, but to the universe for the first time offering something other than struggle." She left the library with the dress carefully zipped in a garment bag she had borrowed. The sky outside had begun to shift into soft shades of pink, the late afternoon sun glowing like a promise. As she walked through the neighborhood, children ran past her. Laughing old men played chess on the sidewalk, music drifted from an open apartment window. For the first time, she felt like the world around her was nudging her forward instead of holding her back. On the subway ride home, Emma held the dress tightly, not wanting it out of sight. People glanced at the garment bag, curiosity flickering in their eyes, but she kept her gaze forward. She felt the weight of the Gala invitation in her pocket and pulled it out. The edges were crisp, the handwriting elegant. For the girl who deserves to be seen. She read the words over and over, letting them settle into her bones. She did not yet know who sent it, but she knew one thing. She would go. She would step into that gala not to prove anyone wrong, but to honor the woman whose dress had somehow found its way to her, to honor the version of herself she had kept hidden. The train screeched to a halt at her stop, and Emma rose with the dress in her hands. She walked into the evening air knowing something had shifted. The girl who had been humiliated days earlier was gone. The woman walking home now carried a secret legacy on her shoulders and a destiny stitched in silver. The night of the King Labs annual Innovation Gala arrived with the kind of brilliance only New York City could conjure. The Met shimmered like a palace carved from glass, and history marble steps glowing beneath camera flashes that sparked in rapid bursts as black cars rolled up one after another. The entire elite of Manhattan gathered there: politicians, tech titans, celebrities dressed in gowns that cost more than Emma's yearly salary. Reporters shouted names, photographers barked for poses, assistants rushed around like frantic stars in orbit. Inside the grand hall, chandeliers glowed like constellations above a sea of glittering gowns and tailored tuxedos. A violin ensemble played an elegant melody while servers wove between guests carrying champagne on silver trays. The air carried the hum of ambition and secrets. Alexander King stood at the center of it all, perfectly composed, every angle of his face lit just enough for the cameras but shadowed enough to maintain the mystique he cultivated. Interviewers crowded him with questions about King Lab's new venture. He answered with practiced confidence, all steel and control. His presence commanded attention, but there was a strange heaviness underneath, as if something unnamed tugged at him. Lucas leaned in, whispering, "Sir, the press wants a few more shots near the innovation display." Alex nodded, though his focus kept drifting toward the entrance for reasons he would never admit out loud. On the opposite end of the hall, Mason Cross arrived, greeted not with polite applause but with genuine warmth. Guests flocked to him, drawn to his charisma, the contrast to Alex. Sharp, precision, unmistakable. He laughed easily, shook hands with a sincerity, posed for photos with charm that looked effortless. Journalists whispered that Crosstech was rising faster than King Labs expected. And yet Mason's eyes also drifted toward the entrance, searching for someone who made him feel unexpectedly hopeful earlier that week. Outside, Emma stepped out of the cab, her legs trembling as she held the garment bag. She could hear the cameras from across the plaza. She inhaled sharply. "This is it," she whispered to herself. She slipped into a side entrance reserved for staff and special guests, where a kind attendant showed her to a small dressing room. When she unzipped the garment bag, the silver dress glowed as though it recognized the night ahead. Emma slipped it on, smoothing the fabric over her hips. She styled her hair, simply letting soft curls fall over her shoulders. She added a touch of makeup, just enough to highlight her eyes without masking who she was. When she finally looked in the mirror, she felt her breath catch. She did not look rich. She looked radiant. Not someone pretending, but someone stepping fully into the world that had always tried to reject her. With unsteady hands, she opened the door and followed the attendant through the polished corridors until they approached the main entrance to the gala. She could hear the orchestra, the chatter, the cameras. Her heart pounded so hard she feared it might echo through the hall. The attendant smiled gently. "When those doors open, walk slowly. Let them see you." She nodded. The doors parted. A soft breeze swept from the hall to meet her, lifting a strand of her hair. Then something happened. The music did not literally stop, but it felt as though the world held its breath. Conversations faltered. Glasses paused mid-air. Heads turned one by one as if drawn by a magnetic pull. The woman in the silver dress stepped into the light. Emma's first steps onto the marble floor were small, hesitant, but graceful. Her eyes lifted just enough to meet the sea of astonished faces. The dress shimmered brilliantly, catching the glow of the chandeliers and scattering it like liquid moonlight across the hall. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Some leaned in to whisper, others stared without shame. Even the camera flashes slowed, as if trying to capture the moment in reverent silence. At the center of the room, Alex froze. His breath hitched. He felt the shock ripple from his chest outward. He saw her not as the coffee girl who walked into his boardroom, but as someone entirely impossible to ignore. His body went still as stone, yet something inside him cracked like ice under sudden heat. No witty remark, no cold detachment came to shield him. He simply stared. Mason paused mid-conversation when he noticed the shift in the room. He followed the line of turned heads until his gaze landed on Emma. A slow, stunned smile formed across his lips, soft, genuine, admiring. "She looks extraordinary," he breathed to himself. The MC, standing near the front podium, blinked twice before speaking into the microphone without thinking. "Ladies and gentlemen." "Who is she?" Emma felt her cheeks warm. She kept walking, letting the world unfold around her. She felt every step like a heartbeat. She did not feel small. She felt seen. A reporter whispered, "That dress, where have I seen it?" Another murmured, "She looks like she belongs here." Emma allowed herself a small, steady breath. She did belong, even if only for this moment. Mason moved first, weaving through the crowd toward her, but Alex reached her sooner as if some instinct propelled him forward. He stopped just inches from her. He looked at her as though the universe had rearranged itself without warning. "Emma." He whispered her name, barely escaping his lips. "Have we met?" Emma lifted her chin just enough to meet his eyes. "Every morning," she said quietly, "when I serve you your coffee." Around them, the whispers sharpened like needles. The humiliation reversal hit like a cinematic blow. Alex felt his chest tighten. It was not embarrassment. It was recognition, and something dangerously close to regret. Mason approached slower, but with a warmth that lit the space around him. He bowed his head slightly toward Emma, eyes soft, full of admiration. "I knew you would shine tonight," he said softly. "But this is beyond anything I imagined." The words sent a ripple straight through Alex. He stood rooted, unable to move as jealousy, like an uninvited flame, curled quietly around the edges of his composure. Emma stood between the two men, the silver dress catching the light as if it were choosing this moment to reveal its destiny. In that suspended breath, the gala transformed. Not because of the billionaires, not because of the cameras, but because a girl who had been invisible her entire life finally entered a room where the world had no choice but to see her. Alexander King had faced hostile investors, ferocious board meetings, and scandals that threatened to crush entire empires, but nothing had ever unraveled him the way Emma's presence did. As she stood in the shimmering pool of silver light, the noise of the gala returned in small, rising waves, murmurs, whispers, camera clicks. But for him, everything else blurred. Only she remained in focus. He took a step closer, feeling something unfamiliar tighten inside his chest. Not fear, but the painful realization that he had been catastrophically wrong about her. Emma held his gaze calmly. Not triumphant, not vindictive, just steady, like someone who had finally found her footing. Alex struggled for words, which in itself was shocking. His entire career had been built on perfect timing, flawless answers, and calculated responses. But now his throat felt tight, as if the right words refused to form. "Emma," he said again, softer this time. When her eyes met his, he saw recognition, the memory of the boardroom, the humiliation, the remark he should never have said. He swallowed. "Have we met?" he repeated, though the answer stung before she even spoke. She looked at him with the quiet strength of someone who had endured much more than he realized. "Every morning," she said, "when I hand you your coffee." The room around them inhaled sharply as if witnessing a reversal written by fate. Alex felt the humiliation shift from her shoulders to his settling like a weight he could not shake. Lucas stood at a distance, watching with wide eyes, understanding instantly that his boss, the man who prided himself on clarity, had just stepped into a moment he could not control. Before Alex could form a sincere apology, Mason Cross arrived with the calm, steady warmth that seemed to follow him everywhere. "Emma," he greeted her gently, as if the entire room had disappeared. His voice softened around her name. "You look breathtaking tonight." Her blush was small but real. "Thank you, Mason." The way she said his name struck Alex like a slow, precise blow. Mason turned slightly, offering Emma a glass of sparkling water instead of champagne, observing her comfort like someone who paid attention to the smallest details. A thoughtful gentleman never assumes, he said lightly, handing her the drink. Emma's hand trembled just a little, but the gesture soothed her. Alex watched all of this feeling. Something coil inside him, unwelcome but impossible to ignore. Jealousy. Not the childish kind. The sharp adult version that came from seeing someone else recognize what he had failed to see. Mason cast Alex a brief impartial glance, the kind two rivals shared when each understood the other's power. But then Mason's attention returned fully to Emma. "I am glad you came," he said sincerely. "Most would be too intimidated to walk through these doors." Emma exhaled softly. "I almost was." Mason smiled with warm confidence. "Almost is not the same as no." Alex stepped in, unable to stand on the sidelines any longer. "Emma, may I speak with you?" he asked, trying to keep his voice steady. She hesitated, her eyes drifting between the two men. Mason noticed the hesitation and spoke gently. "You owe him nothing, Emma." The words hung in the air. Alex's jaw tightened. Emma looked at him with the quiet weight of unspoken memory. She stepped aside, signaling she would hear Alex, but only on her terms. They moved a few feet away, still visible to the guests. Alex tried again this time, with sincerity that felt foreign to him. "I should not have spoken to you the way I did that day." She did not look away. "You meant it," she said softly. "You believed I was insignificant." Alex stiffened. Her honesty cut through the illusion he had built around himself. "I did not know who you were," he admitted. Emma raised an eyebrow. "Does that change how people deserve to be treated?" He felt the words hit like a truth he had avoided for too long. He said nothing. Meanwhile, Mason watched from a distance, his expression unreadable, but his eyes sharp. He saw Alex's struggle and recognized exactly what it meant. The crowd around them began whispering louder, whispering about the girl from nowhere who now held the attention of two of New York's most powerful men. Someone murmured, "Is she a model?" Someone else said, "Maybe she is royalty." Another whispered, "Whoever she is, both CEOs cannot take their eyes off her." Emma looked at Alex and felt a small tremor of conflict. There was something raw in him tonight, something stripped of armor, but she could not forget the wound his words had left. Before Alex could continue, Mason approached again, his presence steady like a protective wall. "Everything all right?" he asked Emma gently. She nodded, but her eyes flickered unsure. Alex's gaze hardened not at her, but at Mason. "This is between us," he said quietly. Mason's smile was calm but firm. Everything involving Emma includes her choice. A subtle challenge. A subtle warning. Emma glanced between them both, realizing she stood in the center of a silent war neither man had intended, but both had now stepped into. The orchestra began a slow, romantic melody, filling the tension with a strange mixture of calm and anticipation. Alex extended a hand to her. "May I have this dance, Emma?" He waited. Mason remained still respectful, offering her no pressure, just presence. Emma hesitated longer than anyone expected. Then she placed her hand in Alex's. Mason's breath dipped barely. Alex exhaled quietly. The dance began gently. Alex held her with careful distance, aware of how fragile the moment was. He spoke softly, the first honest words he had spoken in a long time. "I am trying, Emma. I really am." She looked into his eyes, seeing sincerity but also fear. Not fear of her, fear of himself. Across the hall, Mason watched the dance not with bitterness but with an understanding that surprised him. Yet the ache behind his eyes told the truth. He was not used to losing attention, especially not to Alex. A reporter captured a photo of Emma between the two billionaires, and social media exploded within minutes. The rivalry had begun, and the world sensed it even before the three of them admitted it to themselves. The orchestra shifted into a softer melody, the kind that wrapped around the room like warm silk as Alex guided Emma into the center of the marble dance floor. Dozens of guests slowly drifted aside, giving them space, though their eyes never left the pair. Emma felt the weight of every gaze, but Alex's hand at her waist was careful, almost hesitant, as if he feared he might break something delicate. He kept a respectful distance, yet the closeness between them felt charged like static building before a storm. For a moment, neither spoke. The music carried them in slow circles while the golden chandeliers glimmered above, casting warm light over Emma's silver dress. Alex finally broke the silence, his voice low. "I meant what I said earlier. I was wrong about you." She kept her eyes forward, trying to maintain steady breathing. "One apology does not erase how you see the world." Alex inhaled sharply. "How I saw the world," he corrected gently. She looked at him then, and something in his expression cracked open. Vulnerability, regret. A man who had built his life on walls suddenly facing someone who saw straight through them. Emma glanced away, unsettled by the intensity, but not threatened. More like caught somewhere between disbelief and curiosity. The dance continued slow, rhythmic, almost hypnotic. But across the room, Mason Cross stood watching the pair, his jaw subtly tightening each time Alex leaned closer. Mason had danced with countless women at events like this, but he had never felt this kind of simmering awareness tugging at him. It was the realization that someone else saw what he had seen in Emma first. It bothered him more than he expected. He approached the edge of the dance floor, keeping his expression composed but his eyes sharp. A few reporters noticed the positioning of the two CEOs, both staring at the same woman. Smartphones lifted discreetly, catching the moment. Back under the lights, Emma shifted slightly in Alex's hold. "You treat people like they are temporary," she said quietly. Alex let out a breath that felt almost like a confession. "I treat people based on what the world taught me, not always fairly." She tilted her head. "And what is it teaching you now?" Alex met her gaze fully. "That I should have looked closer." The words fell into the small space between them like a spark touching dry tinder. Emma's chest tightened, though she did not know why. She had no intention of softening toward him, especially after the humiliation and the remark that had branded her as small. And yet the sincerity in his voice disarmed her in ways she did not want to admit. The dance ended, but neither stepped back immediately, as if both were suspended in a moment neither expected. A flicker of something unspoken passed between them. Then the flash of a camera shattered the stillness. A photographer had captured the exact second their faces were close enough for whispers to ignite 1,000 assumptions. Emma stepped back startled. Alex's expression hardened instantly, not toward her, but toward the camera. Mason moved forward, his voice carrying just enough for the photographer to hear. "Careful," he warned. "Some stories are not yours to spin." The photographer retreated, but not before sending the first photo to a gossip page. Emma exhaled shakily, realizing how fragile this world was, how easily a moment could be twisted. She turned to leave the dance floor, but Alex gently touched her arm. "Emma, wait." She paused, but did not turn back. "I need air," she murmured and slipped away into the quieter corridor near the art exhibits. Mason followed at a respectful distance, not chasing, but not willing to let her be alone after such an overwhelming spotlight. Emma stopped in front of a large, abstract painting, the silver tones in it mirroring her dress. She took slow breaths, trying to steady herself. Mason stepped beside her, his voice soft. "I know that look. Overwhelmed, unsure if you walked into a dream or a trap." She let out a shaky laugh. "Something like that." Mason leaned slightly against the wall. Hands in his pockets, his posture relaxed, yet attentive. "You handled everything better than people twice your rank. That took strength." She glanced at him, grateful for the grounding presence he offered. Alex appeared a moment later, having followed them, though with less grace, his emotions barely concealed. The tension thickened instantly. Mason's voice remained calm. She needed Space King. not an army following her. Alex's jaw tightened. I am not an army. I am simply trying to fix what I broke. Mason gave a faint, mocking smile. Interesting timing. Alex ignored the provocation and turned to Emma. May we talk privately? Emma hesitated, glancing between them. Mason's presence felt safe, steady, warm. Alex's presence felt charged, complicated, dangerous in a way that drew and repelled at the same time. A spectator might have thought she enjoyed the attention of two powerful men, but Emma felt only the weight of expectations neither of them fully understood. She straightened her shoulders. If you have something to say, Alex, say it here. Alex looked at Mason, annoyed, but nodded. I wanted to tell you that when you walked in tonight, it felt like the entire room changed. Emma blinked, caught off guard by the admission. Mason's eyes narrowed slightly. Alex continued, his voice quieter. And I needed you to know that what I said that day in the lobby about destiny and staying small, it was wrong. All of it. You are not small, Emma. Mason stepped forward, his eyes locked on hers. I told you that first, he said softly. Not as competition, but as truth. Emma felt a slow tremor inside her, the emotional undulation cresting between them all. She opened her mouth to respond, but the orchestra shifted into another slow song echoing through the corridor. For a moment, the music filled the silence. Alex broke it first. Emma, would you dance with me again? The question was almost gentle. Mason's voice followed with equal softness. Or would you like air away from all this noise? I can walk you to the balcony. The choice hovered in front of her, not romantic, not yet, but heavy with meaning. Emma looked between the two men, the dress shimmering as she breathed in. Her heart was not ready to choose, but she was certain of one thing. Tonight was the first time someone had truly seen her. Not for wealth, not for power, but for presence. The spark between her and Alex had ignited during the dance, undeniable, intense, confusing. But the warmth she felt around Mason was steady like a lighthouse cutting through dark waves. Emma stepped back from both, taking a breath. I need a minute, she whispered. Both men froze, neither pushing, neither turning away. Emma walked toward the balcony alone, the cool night air greeting her as she stepped outside, letting the city breathe with her. Inside the Gala, two billionaires stood watching her go, each feeling the same spark rising into something they could no longer ignore. Morning did not arrive gently. It crashed into Emma's world like a tidal wave of noise vibrating through every corner of the internet. She woke to her ancient phone buzzing non-stop on the nightstand screen, glowing with notifications that multiplied faster than she could read them. Trending topics, hashtags, mentions. The first alert she saw made her stomach drop. Silver Girl. The second hit even harder. Gala Mystery Woman. Her heart hammered as she tapped one link after another. Overnight, her image had exploded across social media, the photo from the dance floor circulating alongside clips of her entrance at the Met. There she was in the silver dress, looking like someone entirely different from the Emma she knew. Strangers commented on her appearance, her posture, her expression. Most were stunned, some admiring, but the tone shifted brutally with the next wave. A new post from an anonymous gossip account appeared boldly at the top of every feed, accompanied by a zoomed-in photo of her between Alex and Mason. The caption read, Gold Digger targets 2 CEOs on the same night. Emma felt the words slam into her like a blow. Hundreds of comments followed, dripping with suspicion, jealousy, rage. People accused her of scheming for fame, claimed she planned the entire entrance, said she intentionally seduced both men to get attention. Someone dug up blurry photos of her leaving one of her jobs, making snide remarks about her clothes, her neighborhood, her background. Others speculated she was a hired escort, that Mason or Alex had paid her to create scandal, that she was a plant from a rival company. Each lie cut deeper. She covered her mouth, her breath shaking. She had done nothing wrong. She simply walked into a room, and the world twisted the truth around her. Her phone buzzed again, this time with a call from Mason. She hesitated before answering. Emma? His voice came warm, steady, concerned. Are you all right? She tried to swallow the lump in her throat. No. He exhaled softly. I saw the posts. They are vicious and untrue. I want you to know that." She closed her eyes, letting his calm tone steady her. But the ache persisted. Mason continued, "You are not alone in this. If you need anything, if you want to talk or need help clearing your name, I am here for you," she breathed out shakily. "Thank you, Mason. Really." Before she could gather herself, another call came through. Unknown number, then another, then a message from her grocery store manager asking if she could avoid coming in today because too many reporters had shown up outside. Her chest tightened further. The world was swallowing her faster than she could breathe. Later that morning in the high glass tower of King Labs, Alex stared at the same rumors spreading across his tablet screen, each headline more cruel and sensational than the last. His jaw locked, the muscle ticking sharply. He had expected attention on the Gala, but not this, not such a vicious storm directed at her. Lucas stood quietly nearby, waiting for his reaction. "Sir, this is getting out of control. They already know she works here. Reporters are camped outside the building." Alex's eyes darkened. "Shut them out. Nobody gets through our doors without authorization." Lucas nodded but hesitated. "The board wants you to release a statement. They said the press is assuming she is tied to you. They want to minimize the damage and distance King Labs from her." Alex's blood ran cold. "Distance her? The board said, sir, that it would be wise to clarify she is not connected to you or King Labs, that she was simply a guest who caused confusion." Alex's breath caught in his throat. Confusion. They wanted him to deny her, to erase her, to categorize her as noise, just like he had done the day he mocked her without knowing her name. He stared at the statement draft Lucas handed him. It claimed she was not a relevant person, not someone of significance, not someone the company recognized. The phrasing was cold, clinical, dehumanizing. He felt a sharp ache in his chest, guilt crashing over him. He should never have allowed the situation to escalate, but now correcting it required a choice he was not ready to make. If he defended her, the board would explode. Shareholders would panic, his rivals would attack. If he stayed silent, she would drown in rumors he had helped create. Hours passed without his response. Meanwhile, in her small Brooklyn apartment, Emma opened her laptop hoping to distract herself only to see a breaking headline. King Labs CEO refuses to comment on mystery woman at Gala. No denial, no support, no truth, just silence. Silence that the world interpreted as guilt, or worse, as confirmation of the rumors. Her throat tightened painfully. Alex said nothing. This was her betrayal. Not the humiliation in the boardroom, not the remark that cut her to the bone, but this. Silence in the moment she needed someone with power to speak. She looked at the photo of him and Mason beside her at the Gala, then pushed it aside, trembling. When her phone buzzed again, she dreaded what she would see, but this time it was a text from Mason. "Do not believe a word they say. I am going to help you clear this." She felt tears well, but refused to let them fall. Emma turned off the screen, pressing her hands to her face. One night, she let herself step into a world she did not belong to. One night, she let herself feel visible, radiant, seen. And this was the cost. She took a long, unsteady breath. She had survived humiliation, poverty, exhaustion. She would survive this too, but the pain settled deep. Alex's silence cut sharper than all the lies combined. In a skyscraper across the city, Alex stared out at the skyline, feeling an ache he could not escape. He had let fear choose for him. Fear of the board, fear of losing control, fear of admitting what she had awakened in him. He whispered her name under his breath, empty room, swallowing the sound. Emma. And for the first time, the man who believed he feared nothing realized he feared losing someone he had barely begun to see. Emma did not plan on leaving her apartment that morning, but something inside her would not let her sit still, letting the world define her narrative while she hid in silence. The dress had been pulled into a scandal. She never asked for her image twisted and weaponized, and she needed to understand why the universe had placed that silver dress in her hands in the first place. With trembling fingers, she grabbed the garment bag, slung it over her shoulder, and took the subway to the community center where Mrs. Callahan had first told her the story. The hallways were quiet, the faint smell of old books lingering in the air. When Emma pushed the door open, Mrs. Callahan looked up instantly, concern flashing in her eyes. "Oh, my dear, you look exhausted." The scandal, she whispered, understanding everything without needing Emma to explain. "People can be cruel." Emma tried to smile, but her voice wavered. "I need to know more about her, about Eva King." Mrs. Callahan guided her to the same wooden table by the window where sunlight filtered through dusty blinds. She pulled out a worn folder wrapped with a ribbon. This belonged to her. Emma opened it gently. Inside were newspaper clippings, photographs, charity event flyers, handwritten notes addressed to the center children's drawings with "thank you" scribbled in colorful crayons. But what caught Emma's breath was a photograph tucked between the pages, a candid shot of Eva King, wearing the silver dress, her hair loose, her smile effortlessly warm. Behind her stood Alexander, younger, softer, holding a cup of coffee as if someone had captured a rare, unguarded moment. Eva had her arm looped around his, and his eyes held something Emma had never imagined him capable of tenderness. Mrs. Callahan spoke quietly. Eva was different from her family. She believed in helping quietly, not for attention, not for tax write-offs, but because she felt responsible for people who were overlooked. Emma traced the outline of the photograph, noticing small details. Tiny earrings, the crease in the side of Eva's smile, the way she held herself with grace, without arrogance. She looked nothing like the icy corporate world Alex lived in. She looked human, alive, full of heart. Emma whispered, almost afraid to break the stillness. "Why did she donate this dress?" Mrs. Callahan folded her hands. She knew she was dying before anyone else did. "She came here a week before she passed with a few things she wanted us to keep until the right moment. She said this dress was meant for someone who needed to be seen, someone who would carry what she could not finish." Emma swallowed hard. "And you think that is me?" The librarian smiled sadly. "I do not think, my dear." "I know." Emma looked back at the photograph, feeling a lump form in her throat. The world saw this dress as scandal bait, but here in this quiet room it was something sacred, a legacy left by a woman whose kindness still echoed years later. Emma traced the silver fabric through the garment bag, remembering how effortlessly it fit her body, how it made her feel like she belonged in a world she had always been shut out of. But the dress had never been about glamour. It had been about identity, about destiny. Mrs. Callahan pulled out another page, this one a note written in delicate handwriting. "To the girl who finds this dress, wear it when you are ready to be seen. You do not need to be wealthy or powerful or important. You simply need to know that you matter. Eva King." Tears blurred Emma's vision. She pressed her hand to her mouth, absorbing each word as if they were oxygen. She whispered her confession into the quiet room. "I do not feel like I matter right now. Not after everything they are saying, not after how he stayed silent." Mrs. Callahan's eyes softened. "The world is loud. Kindness tends to be quiet." Emma closed her eyes, letting the words sink into her bones. When she opened them again, she saw another photograph, this one of Alex and Eva at a family event, both laughing in a candid moment. Emma realized Alex loved his sister deeply, perhaps more than anyone else. And she realized something else. Eva had chosen her. Not Alex, not Mason, not any billionaire or board member. She had chosen Emma, a girl with no money, with no connections, with nothing but stubbornness and a heart she had guarded fiercely. Emma stood slowly, clutching the dress. Her voice steadied. "I want to know more about her." Mrs. Callahan smiled and nodded. Then she began telling stories. Stories of Eva volunteering anonymously at shelters. Stories of her slipping bills into envelopes for struggling families. Stories of the night she donated the dress, whispering to Mrs. Callahan, "This one is special. Keep it for someone just as special." Emma listened, absorbing every detail, every memory, until Eva felt almost real. Almost present, like a guiding hand had been resting on her shoulder long before she ever stepped into that gala. After an hour, Emma stepped outside into the sunlight feeling strangely lighter, as if the weight of the scandal could not overpower the legacy wrapped in that dress. She walked slowly down the block, needing air, needing clarity. Her phone buzzed in her pocket, a message from a number she did not want to see. Alex, Emma, I need to speak with you, please. She stared at the screen, her heart tightening. Hours before his silence had carved a wound she was not sure she could forgive. She tucked the phone away, turning off the ringer. She was not ready, not yet, not until he understood what silence cost people like her. She walked toward the playground where children chased each other laughing. For a moment she watched them, thinking of Eva, who had loved this neighborhood so fiercely. And she realized something important. The dress was not a costume that made her beautiful. It was a mirror showing her the strength she already carried. Before stepping back onto the subway, she whispered to herself, "This dress chose me." Not the scandal, not the lies, not their silence. Me. As the doors closed, she held the garment bag tightly, her reflection in the window, catching a faint shimmer of silver inside. For the first time since the storm began, she felt something steady inside her, something grounded. She felt seen not by the world, not by the men fighting for her attention, but by the legacy of a woman who believed in her, long before she arrived at that gala. Brooklyn wore the kind of rain that felt personal, that steady cold drizzle that seeped through jackets and bones, turning the sidewalks into mirrors where city lights trembled. Emma stepped off the subway, holding the garment bag tightly against her chest, her thoughts storming louder than the weather around her. Her shoes splashed through shallow puddles as she walked toward her building, her breath visible in the damp air. She replayed the events of the week in scattered fragments: the humiliation, the gala, the dance, the photos twisted into lies, Mason's steady voice, Alex's devastating silence, and Eva's handwritten note reminding her that she mattered. The rain fell harder, soaking her hair and clothes, but she kept walking, needing distance from the noise of the city and the noise inside her mind. When she turned the corner onto her block, she saw a figure standing at the foot of her building, half drenched, half illuminated under a flickering street lamp. She froze. Alexander King, the billionaire whose name shook entire markets, stood there alone in the rain without an umbrella, his expensive suit clinging to his skin, his hair plastered to his forehead. He looked nothing like the immaculate CEO the world worshipped. He looked human and heartbreakingly lost. When he saw her approaching, he exhaled a breath he had been holding for hours. Emma. Her name left his lips like something fragile. She wanted to keep walking past him to let him feel the full weight of what his silence had cost her, but her steps slowed against her will. "What are you doing here?" she asked, her voice tight. Alex swallowed rainwater running down his cheeks like tears he would never allow himself to shed. "I needed to see you." She shook her head, stepping back. "You should not be here, not after everything." He took a step toward her, then stopped as if afraid she might disappear if he moved too quickly. I know I should have said something sooner. I know I failed you." Emma's breath trembled. She had imagined confronting him with strength, with anger, but seeing him so unguarded shattered the rehearsed lines she had built in her mind. "You stayed silent," she said quietly. "The world was tearing me apart, and you said nothing." Alex closed his eyes, the shame on his face raw and unfiltered. "I was afraid." The words hit the air like an admission he had never made in his life. Emma stared at him stunned. Afraid of what she whispered. Afraid of losing the board, afraid of losing the company, afraid of losing the image I spent years protecting. He met her eyes, a painful honesty bleeding through, but mostly afraid of you. She blinked, rain mixing with tears she refused to let fall, afraid of me. Why, Alex ran a shaking hand through his wet hair, breath unsteady like he was fighting himself. Because when you walked into that gala, everything changed. My head, my rules, my version of the world. You ruined all of it. You made me feel something I had been trying to erase for years." His voice broke on the last word. Emma felt her heart twist painfully. She wrapped her arms around herself, holding the dress close. "You hurt me, Alex. You let them destroy me." "I know." His voice cracked like glass. "I hated myself with every headline that appeared, with every rumor they pushed onto you. I watched it happen, and I froze. Just like I froze when you walked in wearing that dress." She shook her head, rain streaming down her face. "That dress is not about me being beautiful. It is about identity. It is her legacy, and you let them turn it into something filthy." Alex's breath hitched as though stabbed. "I know. And I swear to you I will make this right. I will fix every lie, every rumor, every story. But that is not why I came." Emma looked at him, feeling the heavy conflict in her chest. "Then why are you here?" Alex stepped closer until the rain between them felt electric. "Because I needed you to hear this from me, not from a statement, not from an apology written by a PR team. From me." His voice softened into something she had never heard from him. "I am sorry, Emma. Truly, deeply sorry." The words trembled from him, raw, unpolished, nothing like the controlled speeches he perfected for the world. Emma felt something inside her chest crack open. This was not the CEO who mocked her in a boardroom. This was a man confronting his own failures without defense. She exhaled shakily. "An apology does not erase what happened." "No," Alex agreed, stepping closer but keeping enough distance for her to choose. "It does not erase your pain. Or my silence. But it is a beginning. I want to do better. Be better. Not for a headline, not for the board. For you." Rain dripped from his jaw, falling onto the pavement between them. Emma forced herself to look away. The ache in her heart refused to quiet. She turned toward the building door. "I cannot do this," she whispered. "Not tonight." Alex nodded once, swallowing the devastation in his eyes. "I understand." She reached the door, placing her hand on the handle when his voice called her back softly. "Emma." She paused. He spoke with the quiet sincerity of a man who had never begged for anything in his life until now. "I am not asking you to forgive me. I am asking you not to close the door permanently." Something in her chest pulled painfully. She opened the lobby door, stepped inside, and turned back for one final look. Alex stood under the rain, completely still. Soaked entirely, a billionaire stripped down to nothing but regret. The door closed slowly between them, the glass fogging with the warmth of the lobby against the cold rain outside. Emma leaned her forehead against the glass, her breath trembling. Outside, Alex did not move. He stayed standing in the rain long after she disappeared from sight, as if punishing himself for every second he had stayed silent while she suffered. And inside, Emma whispered so softly, only the quiet, empty lobby heard her. Why does it hurt more when he apologizes than when he was silent? She did not know yet, but the rain did. And so did the city, watching silently as two broken pieces drifted just close enough to feel the pull but still too far to fall together. The morning after this rain felt strangely hollow, as if the city itself was bracing for something heavy. News vans circled the King Labs tower like hungry vultures, reporters pressed against barricades shouting questions about the Silver Girl scandal. The board had called an emergency meeting before sunrise, their anger simmering through every hallway of the 37th floor. Alexander King walked into the boardroom soaked in the remnants of exhaustion, and rain dried on his clothes. He had not slept. He had barely moved from the spot where Emma had left him the night before. But now he walked with a quiet purpose, the kind that unsettled men who thrived on power. The board sat around the expansive glass table, sharp-suited faces twisted in irritation. One director leaned forward, voice dripping disdain. "Alexander, this fiasco is costing us millions. Investors want answers." Another chimed in. "The girl is everywhere. Headlines, blogs, news networks. People are speculating she is involved with both you and Mason Cross. This is catastrophic." Alex felt a muscle in his jaw tighten, but he kept his gaze steady. The board chairman folded his hands. There is only one solution. You issue a statement that completely distances you from her. Clarify that she is irrelevant, insignificant, and has no connection to you or King Labs. The cold phrasing pierced him. Insignificant. He remembered saying something similar once to Emma before he even knew her name. The chairman continued. After that, we will handle the press and clean up your image. Alex's chest tightened. Clean up your image. As if the truth were dirt, as if Emma were dirt. A director slammed his folder shut. And if you will not do it, Alex, the board will force your resignation until the scandal settles. The threat cut through him like a blade sharper than any financial consequence. Alex looked out through the wall of windows at the skyline, the city he had built his empire in, the city he believed he controlled. But last night in the rain, he had realized a truth he never expected. For the first time in years, he cared about something more than control. He faced the board, his voice steady but carrying an emotion none of them had heard from him. No, they froze. One director blinked. No. What? Alex stepped forward, speaking with clarity. I will not issue a statement distancing myself from Emma Rowe. Gasps spread around the table. Another director snapped angrily. You are jeopardizing the entire company for a girl from Brooklyn you barely know. Alex's voice cut through the chaos. I know enough. I know she did nothing wrong. I know she was dragged into this mess because of me, because I let the world tear her apart. Because I stayed silent. The room went dead still. Alex continued, his voice lower but stronger. I am done being silent. The chairman's eyes narrowed. Then you leave us no choice. Effective immediately, you are suspended as CEO pending further review. Alex felt the weight of the words, but he did not flinch. He simply nodded and placed his King Labs badge on the table. The whole boardroom stared, stunned. Alexander King, the man who had never bowed to pressure, had just willingly stepped down for a woman the world claimed was insignificant. Alex walked out of the room without once looking back. Outside the building, storm clouds gathered over Manhattan. Meanwhile, across town, Emma sat in her small apartment scrolling through the latest headlines. Each one worse than the last. She braced herself, expecting another wave of lies, but then she froze. A new headline flashed across the screen, sending a tremor through her chest. Breaking: Alexander King steps down temporarily from King Labs amid Silver Girl scandal. Her breath caught. She clicked the article, hands shaking. The report said he refused to disassociate from her, that he rejected the board's demands, that he refused to call her insignificant. Emma covered her mouth, trembling. A video clip followed showing Alex leaving the building surrounded by cameras. A reporter shouted, "Why? Step down! Mr. King, is this because of the mystery woman?" Alex paused, turned toward the crowd, rain dampening his hair. His voice was steady. "The woman in the silver dress is not a scandal. She is the only person who reminded me who I am." The clip ended there, but Emma felt her whole world tilt. No one had ever stepped down for her. No one had ever risked anything for her. She closed her eyes, gripping the phone against her chest, breath unsteady. As she sat there overwhelmed, her phone buzzed. Mason! He had seen the news too. "Emma," he said softly, "I know what he did." She swallowed, her voice barely audible. "Why would he do this?" Mason hesitated, then answered honestly. "Because he finally saw you. Really saw you." Mason's tone carried no bitterness, only understanding. Then he added quietly, "He did not fall from power, Emma. He stepped down for you." That sentence shattered her. Tears slid silently down her cheeks. Not from pain this time, but from something deeper, something she had not allowed herself to feel. Worth. She hung up gently and pressed her palms to her eyes, trying to steady her breath. Hours later, Emma stood at her window, watching Brooklyn breathe beneath clouds heavy with rain. She thought of the girl in the silver dress, the woman who had walked into the Met with fear trembling inside her. She thought of Eva King and the legacy she left. And she thought of Alex standing in the rain, confessing a truth he had buried under years of ice. She whispered to herself, half in disbelief, half in wonder. He sacrificed everything for me. The realization hit like a tidal wave, warm and devastating. Hot tears streamed down her face as she pressed her forehead to the cool glass. Emma was not crying for the scandal or the lies. She cried because for the first time someone with unimaginable power had chosen her not as an accessory, not as a distraction, not as a rumor, but as someone worth losing everything for. And that truth cracked her heart wide open. Emma stood outside Alex's loft in Manhattan, staring up at the tall windows glowing faintly against the night sky. She should not have been there. She told herself all day she needed time, that she needed space, that she needed clarity before facing him again. But her heart refused logic. The moment she watched the video of him stepping down, the moment she heard his voice break with truth, the moment she whispered to herself, "He sacrificed everything for me." Something inside her shifted so deeply she could no longer pretend distance would save her. She climbed the stairs slowly, each step echoing in the quiet hallway until she reached the door. Her fingers hovered over the buzzer, trembling. She inhaled, exhaled, knocked softly. For a few seconds there was nothing. Then footsteps. The door opened. Alex stood there in sweatpants and a black t-shirt, his hair still damp from a shower, his eyes tired but startlingly alive when they found hers. For a moment, neither spoke. The air between them tightened with everything they had not said, everything they feared to admit. "Emma," he breathed her name like a whispered confession. She swallowed hard. "Can I come in?" His answer was immediate. Always. He stepped aside, letting her enter the spacious loft. It felt strangely empty, without the aura of power he once carried. It felt human. She walked slowly to the center of the room, turning to face him. He stood a few feet away, hands at his sides as if afraid to move closer, terrified she might step back. She looked at him quietly, then said the words that cut straight through the silence. "Why did you do it, Alex? Why would you give up everything for someone like me?" He inhaled sharply, his voice trembling. "Do not say someone like you. You speak as if you are small, but you have been the only real thing in my life for a very long time." Her breath caught. Alex stepped closer, slowly, deliberately giving her space to stop him if she needed to. She did not. When he spoke again, his voice was low, raw, painfully honest. "I did not step down because of guilt, or because the board wanted to use you to control me. I stepped down because when I saw the lies tearing you apart, I realized I had become the kind of man Eva would not recognize. And the kind of man you deserved nothing to do with." Emma felt her chest tighten painfully. He paused, eyes searching hers. "I lost myself somewhere along the way. Power, success, control, they became my language. But you walked into that gala, and for the first time in years I remembered the version of me my sister believed in. The version who knew kindness. The version who saw people not as pieces in a system, but as human beings with dreams and fear and dignity. You reminded me who I was supposed to be." She blinked, tears rising, but she held them back. Emma spoke quietly, trembling. "You hurt me, Alex." His face broke. I know I did. And if you never forgave me, you would be right. But I am standing here without a title, without a company, without the armor I have worn all my life because you deserved someone who would fight for you instead of hide behind you." She closed her eyes, overwhelmed by the sincerity she had never thought she would hear from him. When she opened them, her voice cracked. "I was angry. So angry. You stayed silent when I needed someone to speak. You let them say things about me that carved wounds I did not know how to close." Alex stepped even closer now, only a breath away. "I stayed silent because I was afraid of losing everything. And then I realized you were everything." And the words hit her chest like a soft earthquake. She felt her breath catch painfully. Alex lifted a hand slowly, giving her time to pull back, but she did not. He brushed a raindrop-shaped strand of hair from her cheek. His touch, feather, light as if afraid she might shatter. Emma's voice was barely audible. "Why do you say things like that now? Why, after everything?" He swallowed. "Because last night when you closed the door on me it felt like the world was ending, and I deserved every second of that pain. And because today, when I watched your name dragging through the headlines again, I realized something painfully clear. I do not just want to protect you. I want to choose you." Emma felt tears fall this time, unchecked warm against her cheeks. She whispered brokenly, "You cannot choose me because you feel guilty." Alex shook his head fiercely. "No, not guilt. Truth." He took her hands gently in his palms, warm, steady grounding. "I did not freeze when I saw you in that dress because you looked beautiful, even though you did. I froze because for the first time in years I wanted to be someone worthy of the woman in front of me." Her breath caught in a soft, painful gasp. Those words hit deeper than anything she had ever heard. He pressed her hands against his chest where his heartbeat thudded unevenly. "Emma, I am not asking you to fix me. I am asking you to let me try to be better with you." Her tears flowed silently. She looked at him finally, letting herself see all of him, not the billionaire, not the CEO, not the man who had hurt her, but the man who was trembling slightly because he feared losing her more than anything. Emma whispered, "I do not need your money, Alex." "I never did." His eyes softened, breaking entirely. "I know. That is why I am here. That is why this matters." For the first time since they met, the silence between them felt warm, not cold. Healing, not sharp. Emma stepped closer until their foreheads touched both of them, breathing shakily as if the moment might break if either moved too fast. Neither kissed. Neither rushed. It was more intimate than anything physical. It was a choice. A fragile, trembling, undeniable choice. In the quiet loft, lit only by the faint glow of the skyline, two broken hearts found a way to beat in the same rhythm for the first time. Emma whispered through tears. "I am still scared," Alex whispered back. "So am I." And then he said the words that finally unlocked her heart. "But I would rather be scared with you than safe without you." Emma exhaled a breath that felt like release, like surrender, like coming home after years of wandering. She wrapped her arms around him slowly, and he pulled her against him with a gentleness she did not think he possessed. No promises, no titles, no grand declarations. Just two souls choosing each other in the quiet dark of a Manhattan night. Time stilled again, and this time it did not break them. 1 year later, New York greeted spring with soft golden light pouring over the skyline, warming the glass towers and quiet brownstone streets alike. The city felt different to Emma, as if the world had stretched open just enough for her to step through without apologizing for the space she occupied. She stood in front of the mirror inside her small but bright new office at the Silver Heart Foundation, smoothing the fabric of her dress, a simple, soft blue one this time, not silver. The silver dress hung carefully inside a protective case displayed on the wall behind her, framed under gentle lighting like a reminder of a life-changing moment rather than a symbol of scandal. The foundation had grown beyond her most ambitious hopes, helping hundreds of women find housing, job training, community support. Every success story whispered the same truth Eva King had tried to leave behind. Everyone deserves to be seen. Today marked the 1-year anniversary of the Gala night when everything changed and King Labs, now reformed, reopened its annual event with a new theme, Innovation with Humanity. It was Alex's idea, the board unanimously approving after seeing the transformation he brought since returning as CEO 4 months earlier. He had built a company culture rooted in compassion, transparency, inclusion. The world noticed. But, more importantly, he and Emma had spent the year building something private, steady, slow. A relationship grounded in understanding rather than headlines. Tonight, they would walk into the gala together for the first time, not as a rumor, not as a scandal, but as two people who had chosen each other in the quiet moments between chaos. Emma slipped her coat on and stepped outside where a sleek car waited, but for once it was not one of Alex's. It belonged to the foundation donated by a woman whose life had been changed because of Emma's work. She rode to the Met, quietly watching the city pass by, feeling the calm that used to elude her. When she arrived, a staff member guided her to a small private entrance, not because she needed to be hidden, but because the event team wanted to coordinate the moment she appeared. As she stepped into the preparation hall, she heard familiar footsteps. She turned. Alex stood there dressed in a tailored charcoal suit, crisp white shirt undone at the collar just slightly enough to soften him the way she liked. His eyes warmed the moment they found hers. "You look beautiful," he murmured. She smiled, teasing. "You say that every time you see me, because it is always true." He stepped closer, brushing her hand gently. "Nervous?" she asked. "A year ago, yes," he admitted. "Tonight, no." His voice softened. "Because I'm not walking into that room alone." Emma felt warmth bloom in her chest. She reached up, smoothing a stray strand of hair off his forehead, a gesture that had become instinctive. They shared a quiet moment's stillness settling between them like a harmony only they understood. Then a coordinator approached with a headset. "It is time." Alex turned to Emma, offering his hand not as a gesture of possession, but partnership. "Ready." "Ready." They walked toward the tall double doors that opened to the grand hall. The orchestral music drifted faintly through the cracks in the doors, the hum of hundreds of conversations blending with soft laughter and clinking glasses. The coordinator gave a signal. The doors opened. Light spilled forward, and for a moment it felt as if the world paused exactly as it had 1 year earlier. But the story was different now. Emma stepped through, first the soft blue dress floating around her like calm water. Guests turned one by one, recognizing her not as a scandal, not as a mystery, not as a rumor, but as the woman who founded a movement that had changed lives. A reporter whispered, "That is her, the Silver Heart founder." Another added, "She is the one who inspired King Lab's new initiative." Cameras lifted, but gently respectfully. Emma did not shy away. She walked with quiet confidence, her chin raised, eyes forward, shoulders relaxed. Alex walked beside her, steady, warm, proud. The MC at the podium looked up, his smile widening. "Ladies and gentlemen, welcome our guest of honor, the woman who reminded a billionaire what it means to be human." The room erupted with applause, not forced, not polite, but genuine, the sound swelling around them like a wave. Emma felt her breath hitch, remembering the same hall a year earlier when whispers had followed her entrance like knives. Tonight, the sound lifted her instead of cutting her. Alex leaned close, whispering softly, "This time, the whole world sees you." And she believed him. After greeting a few guests, Emma stepped toward the side of the hall where a new exhibit had been prepared. There, framed behind glass under soft white light, stood the silver dress. The plaque beneath it read, "The Silver Dress, a symbol of identity, legacy, and the power of being seen. Donated by the Silver Heart Foundation in honor of Eva King." Emma felt her throat tighten as she touched the glass. Alex slipped beside her, taking her hand. "She would have been proud," he said quietly. Emma breathed deeply. "I hope so." He nodded. "I know so." Across the room, Mason Cross approached with a warm, easy smile. He had become a steady presence in both their lives over the past year, supporting the foundation, collaborating with Alex despite their rivalry, forming something almost like friendship. He raised a glass toward Emma. "Congratulations, Emma. You built something extraordinary." She smiled, grateful. "Thank you, Mason." Mason nodded at Alex with a subtle grin. "You two clean up well together." Alex smirked slightly. "Must be the influence of good company." Mason laughed softly, shaking his head before drifting back into the crowd. The evening continued with speeches, moments of quiet admiration, conversations with women whose lives the foundation had changed. Through it all, Emma felt something steady growing inside her. Peace, gratitude, belonging. Near the end of the night, the orchestra shifted into a soft, melodic tune. Alex turned to her, extending a hand. "Dance with me, Emma." She took his hand without hesitation. They walked onto the same marble floor where 1 year ago time had stopped in shock. Tonight, time slowed in reverence. As they danced, he held her gently, careful, steady, safe. She leaned her head against his shoulder, feeling the warmth of a man who had once feared vulnerability but now embraced it for her. He whispered softly, "Thank you for walking into that boardroom 1 year ago." She smiled against his chest. "I did not walk in. I tripped in." He laughed quietly. Best accident of my life. She lifted her head, meeting his gaze. I choose you, Alex. Today, tomorrow, for as long as we grow together. His eyes softened with a warmth that melted the last pieces of ice inside him. And I choose you, Emma. Not because of a dress or a moment or a past, but because you see me in ways nobody else ever has. They continued dancing as cameras captured the quiet intimacy, but for once, neither cared. Tonight did not belong to headlines or scandals or whispers. Tonight belonged to two people who had rebuilt themselves and each other slowly, carefully, beautifully. As the final note of the song faded, Emma rested her forehead against his. Everyone deserves to be seen, she whispered, even if the world is not looking yet. Alex smiled. Then, let us keep looking for each other. The chandelier lights shimmered above them like scattered stars, reflecting the silver dress displayed behind glass like a symbol of destiny fulfilled. And in the center of the Met, held in the soft glow of a new beginning, Emma and Alex stood together. Not because fate demanded it, not because scandal forced it, but because love, carefully chosen, quietly nurtured, had finally found its place. If you are still here with me after this journey, then family, let me tell you something from the heart. This story was never just about a billionaire, a dress, or a gala. It was about the quiet truth we all carry. The truth that sometimes life pushes us into shadows until one moment, one choice, one person reminds us we were meant to be seen all along. And if Emma and Alex's journey touched something deep inside you even for a second, I hope you hold on to that feeling, because somewhere in your own life there is a version of you waiting to step into the light too. Maybe tonight, maybe next month, maybe when you least expect it, and if you felt the pain, the heartbreak, the storm, the healing and the warmth in their story, then you already know the truth. Real love, whether romantic or human, or self-love, does not rush it, does not shout it, does not demand it. Simply shows up quietly, consistently, bravely. Just like Emma did for herself, and just like Alex finally learned to do for her, and if their journey reminded you that transformation is possible even for the coldest hearts, then maybe it reminded you to give yourself permission to grow too. Family, before you scroll away. If this story made you cry, made you smile, made you think, or simply made you feel something real, I want you to answer these 3 little questions in the comments, because I read them all genuinely and they help me create stories that feel alive for you. Question 1. Did you believe Alex deserved a second chance after everything he did? Or do you think Emma's forgiveness came too hard, too slow, or just right? Question 2. Who did you trust more at the beginning? Alex, with his walls, or Mason, with his warmth? And tell me, did your answer change by the end? Question 3. What part of the journey hit your heart the hardest? The humiliation, the scandal, the apology in the rain, the sacrifice at the boardroom, or the final walk into the gala 1 year later? Because your answers help shape the next stories we build together, and if you want more slow burn healing, billionaire romance stories like this one's that start in pain, move through storms, and end in a breath of hope, then make sure you tap. Like so, YouTube knows you want more. Subscribe, so you never miss the next chapter of our storytelling family, and turn on the little bell so you are here, first when the next journey drops, and family. I want you to comment your city too, because every time I see readers from Houston to London, from Trinidad to California, from Manila to Toronto, it reminds me how stories connect us across oceans and time zones. And it makes every late-night writing session worth it. And before you go, I want you to remember this one thing. If nobody has told you today, you matter. Your story matters, your voice, your journey, your scars, your healing. All of it matters. You deserve to be seen. Even if the world is not looking yet, and if you are watching this while tired, lonely, overwhelmed, or just trying to breathe through your own storms, I hope this story gave you a little warmth, a little hope, a little reminder that light always finds its way back in. And finally, if you want part 2 or a bonus scene, maybe Alex and Emma's first trip together, or Mason's untold storyline, just comment silver dress below, so I know you want it. Family, Thank you for being here, thank you for feeling this story with me, and thank you for letting me tell it for you.